So here's a very interesting article that I never really considered. Now, I always knew about, the baby boomers. They're going to retire one day. Things are going to slow down a little bit as far as reproduction goes. But this guy lays it out and shows you, which there's a graph, and I'm going to show you the graphs and charts, lays it out. Here's why we're going to have a major, what he says, UN base case, I think he meant best case, shows massive depopulation among young. The world economy is likely to decelerate indefinitely. No difficult economic terms, no tough charts, just simple math. My kind of stuff. Programmer mindset, as a developer, IT guy, we are always, look, just show me the numbers, get the emotions, get this crap out of my face. I don't care how you feel. Just show me the numbers. Show me the stats. Show me this, the statistics. Show me the freaking data. I don't care about anything else. That's all that matters. Kind of like, remember when Lindsay Williams, Lindsay, did you talk to your elite friend on that one? No, I did not. Did your elite friend tell you that? No, he did not. I love you, but we only want to know what specifically your elite friend said. I don't care if you know a Wall Street guy, because that's never panned out. I don't care if you know an expert in it. That's never panned out. What has always panned out is your elite friend's words. That's all we want. No offense. We don't want your speculation or someone else's. We want his. In other words, give us the data. And that elite friend was the data. It was on point. So that's all this guy's saying. I've got data that shows as the years go on, this shouldn't be, rainbows, puppy dog tails, unicorns, and we got a problem. And the gist of this, I'll just tell you right off the bat, the gist of this is that, people retire, the younger people have to toe the load, they're the ones paying the taxes, they're the one keeping the economy up, so to speak. And if that pool of younger people dwindles as compared to the way it was going up every year, every decade, now it's going down, what does that mean? It's simple. This small group of people can't financially support the larger group of elderly or older people who will be retiring. Because there's going to be a whole lot more people in the retired side than the working side, if you will. That's what he is saying he has data on. So again, I'm all for Trump, make America great again. I love the man. He's doing a fantastic job so far. I'm very proud. But data is data. And if the data says, look, sorry to rain on your parade, but I got to, then damn it, I don't want to turn my face. Rain on me. I want to see what this is. I'll take it. Good information, bad information, data, no data. I want data. Good or bad. Just give it to me. So he says, number one, well, I'm scrolling down to see if there's a number two. It starts off with number one and it doesn't go anywhere else. The world's population of under 40-year-olds, and he's, for most of this, he's saying excluding Africa. So the rest of the world, excluding Africa. The world's population of under 40-year-olds, excluding Africa, has essentially peaked. In the chart below, he says, the bars represent 0 to 40-year-old population. The dashes are United Nations future estimates. What is interesting about, and I'll show you in 1 second, what is interesting about the under 40-year-old population is that they are responsible for about 97% of all pregnancies/births. It's not impossible for a 40-plus-year-old woman to have children. It's just statistically very rare, particularly outside the developed world. Okay? Let's take a look at this chart real quick. World population, 0 to 40-year-olds, excluding Africa. 1950, 70, right here, the baby boomers, all this stuff's happening, 2010, up. And now they're saying that this is what they're suggesting. Estimate, UN lowest in median estimate. So we got some problems, okay? Let's continue reading on. It says, okay, we've established the global under 40 population, excluding Africa, has essentially peaked. Now we lay out the chart below that a shrinking population, let me go ahead and pull that up while I talk. The chart below that a shrinking population above isn't replacing themselves. Chart below shows world fertility rates, again breaking world fertility, excluding Africa, from the African fertility rate. The world, excluding Africa, has fallen below the 2.1 births per female replacement level, and even Africa is rapidly slowing. So you can see this is the African number, 6.6 down to 5.0. Here's the rest of the world, 4.7. We're talking 1960s, baby boomer roughly, which usually was the 50s, but again, that's close enough. It's around there too. 4.7 down to 2.0. So clearly there's a trend, right? I mean, this is a trend. You got to follow and listen to the trends. It's that simple. A flat to shrinking childbearing population that is not reproducing at a rate to replace themselves, and the fertility rates continue to fall. This all points to the potential, as in the low UN 0 to 40-year population estimate, could be fairly accurate. With either the medium or low estimate, the UN is telling us they expect a massive depopulation of under 40-year-olds world over. Somewhere between 1 billion to 2.5 billion fewer under 40-year-olds by the turn of the century, and perhaps well in excess of a 50% decline. And he says, except for Africa, ? I lay out why the excluding Africa approach to viewing global economics makes sense here in a different article. I'm not going to read that. The next three charts show annual global growth. Let's pull that up. Excluding Africa, the charts show average annual population growth per 5-year periods. Chart below, annual population growth clearly peaked in the 1985 to 1990 timeframe at about 75 million plus year over year, and two, I guess that was one, and two, the makeup of that growth has entirely shifted from primarily among the under 40-year-olds to primarily 65-plus-year-olds. These trends are about to get much worse from an economic and consumption standpoint. The chart below is focusing on the changing nature of the annual global population growth. Finally, a quick look at select years to show the changing nature of the global population growth, shifting from nearly entirely growth among the young to declines among the young, only somewhat offset by the elderly living far longer, which is here. All the interest rate cuts and debt has been undertaken under the paradigm that it would be more easily repaid in the future, but now we're coming into the future. We are at the future, where there are fewer of us to service the debt, buy homes, buy cars, consume our way to prosperity, or pay the taxes to keep the social systems solvent. Basically, we are doing our best Willie E. Coyote or Wile E. Coyote impression. We've gone over the cliff, but somehow haven't realized it quite yet. What this has looked like in the U.S. and globally here, which I'm going to open in a second. Of course, the flip side is the 40-plus-year-old world, excluding Africa population, is set to continue soaring. Unfortunately, by age 65, the population consumes about 70% of its peak earning years, and by 75, consumption falls to somewhere around 50 to 60%. The elderly are credit averse, have made their major life purchases and spending, kids, homes, college, and turn to net sellers in retirement, absent a growing population of young to buy their assets, IRAs, homes, etc., retirement funds, treasuries, you know what I mean? We have a small problem. Central bank asset purchases to the rescue. As for Africa, the population growth there generally consume at a rate of 5 to 10% the consumption of the depopulating young they are replacing. Global economic activity and consumption are likely to fall off a steep, high precipice. The implications economically, financially, societally, etc., of a collapsing population of young and soaring older population should be ringing alarm bells, but instead, our politicians seem officially mindless or intentionally misleading the populace in the face of a cataclysmic shift. Just to make the point, here is what the shift looks like for the U.S. Let's look at that. The breakdown in growth among 25 to 54-year-old employees, which is the blue line, coinciding with interest rate cuts, black line, and massive federal debt increases, red line. The chart below shows the federal debt apportioned per the nearly 100 million 25 to 54-year-old employees, which is the red columns, versus the non-growth in wages shown by the real median household income, green line. Let's take a look at this for a second. This is not looking good. I want to see what he said about this other thing. Policymakers, like generals, are busy fighting the last war. In 2008, the economic generals at the various central banks likewise pulled out the playbook to refight the Great Depression, not realizing this time was an entirely different opponent. Federal governments and central bankers, presumed doing what they had always done, would again win the day, cut interest rates, this time to zero, to incent both public and private entities to refinance existing debt loads and undertake new, greater leverage. This nearly free money would reduce debt service levels, and the new loans would ignite a new wave of economic activity in the form of capital expenditures and small business creation. Economic multipliers and velocity would ensure general prosperity with job and wage growth. Instead, it's the Maginot line all over again for our economic generals as economic activity grinds to a stall absent the illusionary asset bubbles. By the way, if you are not a fan of charts or visual representation, this is not the article for you, and likely best stop here. So what changed, he said? The global population of young, future consumer base ceased growing 30 years ago. For hundreds, if not thousands of years, global population growth rose at an annual rate of about 0.2% to 0.4%. Somewhere in the 19th century, the pace of population growth began rising significantly faster and headed to a global rate never seen before and likely never to be seen again. The rate of population growth peaked around 1970 and has precipitously fallen off since. However, despite the collapse in the rate of population growth, the total population has continued to rise due to the existing population living decades longer than the previous generation. The world's population ceased growing in about 1988. Since that time, the world is only growing older. Below, global births per 5-year periods, plus UN median and low estimates. The double peak from 85 to 90, as in the years. Maybe that's age. And again, 10 to 15. I think it is 1985 to 1990, maybe means 2010 to 2015. Yep, I can see on the chart. Is clear, and as for the future, the reality will be somewhere between the median and low estimates, but flat to declining births will be the order of the day. So it only figures if you track the population of young 0 to 4-year-old total annual population that they would essentially cease growing. The population growth party was over and it ended almost 30 years ago. The world's population is still growing due to a surge in the elderly living longer and high African birth rates offsetting global depopulation of young. And again, in America and in the civilized world, if you will, Western world, we don't really care what Africa does or doesn't do. It doesn't really affect us at all. So if you take Africa out of the picture, we're looking down the barrel of a shotgun, if you will. So if there was no increase in the global number of births or the population of young, how did the world grow so much? The old living so much longer. The chart below shows the two ends of the life spectrum, the global population of 0 to 4-year-olds versus the 75-year-olds. Let me just pull this up in case you want to see it. Both populations grew rapidly until 1990, but since 1990, the 75-plus population has nearly doubled, while the population of young isn't budging. And by 2050, the population of elderly will surpass the population of young, undoing what was a 10-to-1 ratio in 1950. Why is this a bad thing economically? 65-year-olds consume at about 70% of the rate they did when they were their peak years, working years. By the time they are 75 plus years old, their consumption drops to 50 to 60%, as we just discussed. They are credit averse, preparing for or on fixed incomes, and napping is one of their favorite activities, and it doesn't cost a thing. Global depopulation of young, excluding Africa. The chart below highlights global births per 5-year periods, plus UN estimates for medium and low future births. Again, the reality will likely split the UN estimates, but a clear peak in the 1980s, late 80s, in huge deceleration of births since is undeniable. So I can stop now at this point. There's quite a bit more to this. Quite a bit more to that, but it's simple. There's not enough young people to support the older people. And as the older people, as he's saying, don't spend as much money as they used to, therefore they're not consumers like the rest of us, at least to the level you and I are, or people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever. There's going to be a whole lot of those people not wanting to spend as much. And a whole little of us, as in the people my age now, 30s, 20s, 40s, etc., even 50s. So how does the economy continue to just flourish when a huge part of the consumer base is now statistically going away? And we're going to be left with a lot of people who don't consume as much. This cannot end well. Doesn't matter who's in the White House, doesn't matter who's anywhere. This cannot end well. The good news is it doesn't mean it's going to be tomorrow or the next day or anything. We're going to have problems year after year, I think, as this becomes more and more of an issue. So, if you want to look at one other thing, let me just show you this, because it's another interesting piece of this chart. And let me zoom in a little bit if I can. Real median household income versus federal debt per 25 to 50-year-old employee. Goes back to 1984, by the way. Real median household income, median, $48K, 1984. Okay? Debt, $22K. Funny thing starts happening. Oh, look at that. Bush gets, this is after Reagan, Bush, Bill Clinton, okay, George W., Papa Bush's son, Barack Obama, and here we are now in 2016, which I know we started in 2017 now, this year, but this is just as accurate, this is just as good. We got a problem because here, the household median income says $58K. Again, this is not just America, apparently. This is worldwide, excluding Africa, I believe. Let's see. Doesn't say if this one's excluding Africa or not, but it does say nearly 100 million. The chart below shows total federal. Yeah, this would be America. Total federal debt apportioned by the nearly 100 million 25 to 54-year-old employees. So yeah, we're talking. This is America. I'm just looking at this saying 58K though. Is 58K the real median household income? Because that would be like mother and father. That's suggesting that mother and father maybe one makes 25K, the other one makes 30K on average. Maybe that is right. I don't know. I guess it could be. But what are we seeing here? We're seeing that this is barely moving. Real wealth, real household income is, not necessarily wealth, but household income is barely moving. While the debt load on said individuals, look at it again, look at 1984. This is insane. This is the way it's supposed to look, 1984 and 85 possibly. That's how it should be. Small amounts of debt, decent income, that's middle class all day. But look at 2000. And then it just goes up, up, up. And again, after 2008, just exponentially. $202,000 in debt, the average person with their $58,000 median household income. This is one chart that nobody can argue with. No matter who's with President Trump, unless he's willing to wipe out everybody's personal debt along with the country's debt and start over, and that is not likely even kind of. But if by chance he was somehow able to do that, that's the only way that could fix this problem. But since this isn't a movie where the good guys win at the end, I think we have some problems that we're going to be dealing with as a society on planet Earth as a whole. Take care.